wanted to start by saying thank you for meeting us at 90.5 FM KSJS to spread the word about Silicon. And how has the preparation been for this last 3 months or however long it's been since you started? And how are you feeling today about it?
I'm feeling amazing about it. I'm really excited about Silicon SJ this year. The preparation has been going, it feels like it's been going nonstop since the beginning of 2020. Late 2019 is when I started my partnership with Silicon. And obviously the pandemic fell upon us. So we did not have an IRL conference in 2020, but we were able to in 2021. It was a very intimate affair. And I mean, with each of the last two years, 2020, 2021, it's been such a constant occupation of trying to figure out the way to keep the energy up, to keep people interested in Silicon, to keep spreading the word about making and the things that are important to us. So we are so excited to have what feels like a real sized con this August. The preparation's going stunningly. We have some amazing guests. We have some wonderful science track panels. We're less than 30 days out, so my head is down and to the grindstone.
I got excited when I saw some of the cast from The Expanse, so I'm definitely hoping I can meet and greet later next month with that, or this month. It's August 1st already.
Yeah.
So, how did you and Trip Hunter meet, and how long did it take to plan the first one of these? Because I know it wasn't originally called Silicon. It was the Santa Clara Valley Comic-Con or
Silicon Valley Comic-Con. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I'll let you answer that.
Well, Silicon's been around now for years, and I've been going to every single one. We were excited to have a local con in the area when WonderCon left Moscone for Anaheim. And I met Trip that very first year, and Trip is a remarkable human being. And we took to each other mostly with terrible jokes. That was one of our first forays into understanding we had similar senses of humor. And honestly, the entire association I've had with Silicon, it's always felt like I've been deeply a member of that family. And we just decided to take it official in 2020.
This is kind of like an unlisted one, but how much creative freedom do you feel like you've had in controlling the direction of Silicon compared to maybe other members on it?
That is an interesting word you use, controlling, because I feel tremendous creative freedom and very little control. But that's like in a good way. I have a whole bunch of collaborators. Silicon is not only me by any stretch of the imagination. And my partners in running it, the team, the very small, scrappy team that we put this con on with, our family. And so it's not like I feel a need to have a sense of control over that creative direction. What I feel is a sense of real creative alignment with my partners in putting on the con that we want to put on, giving fans the experience we hope that they have. And even down to making sure that we're creating the circumstances for fans to have an experience we did not expect, to have an intersection with the material that we didn't necessarily even plan for, because we love those happy accidents.
I'm curious about the materials because my perception of it is like going to be a kit people can buy stuff on demand, or like how is that going to work for those who aren't bringing their own stuff to create with?
Oh, do you mean in the makerspace?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the really key things to talk about, I think, about Silicon is that we are the Makers Con. And each con over the years, I mean, there's so many pop culture cons around the United States and around the world, but many of the larger ones tend to find a niche and really sort of carve it out. San Diego Comic-Con is without a doubt the 800-pound gorilla of cons. It is the industry con. It's where Kevin Feige goes to show the slate for the new MCU phase. Dragon Con in Atlanta on Labor Day is absolutely thought of as the cosplayers con. We want Silicon to be the Makers Con. And as such, we have allocated a huge amount of the actual con floor for a makerspace where there will be tables for constructing, tools placed at your disposal, and you can buy boxes of all sorts of different kinds of materials to get your maker on. There'll be workshops and contests all weekend long, sort of any intersection you want to have with it, whether you're a kid or an adult or someone who just wants to get their hands dirty that day. We have your experience at the makerspace at the con.
So that was expanded from last year for the Maker event. Like in size, what is available that wasn't available before in
We've
21?
allocated about 20% of the con floor, and we're basically just increasing the maker track at the con this year. You know, one of the things that I feel really grateful for is that Mythbusters came to fruition right around the same time as the maker movement in the Bay Area and around the world was really ascendant. Some incredible tools were coming online, laser cutters and 3D printers, what were called rapid prototyping now, rapid manufacturing tools. And on Mythbusters, we got to watch that happen at the same time as I felt like we helped that happen and it helped us happen. So we want to celebrate all of that at Silicon with this allocation. So the makerspace will also be a real separated space, a little bit of a corral, so you can see that cool things are happening over there.
That's so nice. I imagine there's all sorts of additive manufacturing printers. Like if someone wanted access to SLA or
I don't
composite.
think we're going. We might be doing demo 3D printing on the floor, but given that it is a time-intensive process, I don't think we'll be offering 3D printing services during the con.
Fair enough. Yeah. What impact are you hoping to have on first timers who are coming into the makerspace?
Well, to me, the makerspace is part and parcel of the con. And so really the thing that catches most people's eyes as first timers to any con are the costumes. It's one of the reasons I want to be there. It's one of the things that drew me to my first con. And the cosplay on display at Silicon is amazing, as it is at every pop culture con. But the difference here is that we want to remove the mystery of how did they do that. So we have makers like Bill Duran and Beverly Downen. Jen Schachter, one of Tested's own, is really commandeering and leading this space so that the first timer will not just see the tools of making, they'll see the direct line to how these incredible costumes come to fruition on the floor and that they can play. That's my goal, is that the first timer sees and experiences a low threshold to entry. I am anti-gatekeeping in every place that I can find it. And this is absolutely one. I want people to let their freak flag fly.
I remember before I was transferring into film, I was an industrial designer, and I guess there is a good amount of gatekeeping in terms of the quality of the craftsmanship. And I bet some people going in for the first time might feel intimidated. Like, is my work going to be good enough? But I guess it's just go out there and try it.
Well, and intimidation is a real feeling. Absolutely. You can look at some incredible costumes and feel like, I don't think I belong anywhere near such an incredible execution. And the answer is you totally do belong there. In fact, one of my favorite things to see at any con are the people that clearly pulled their costume together in 10 minutes out of a back closet somewhere in their basement. Those are some of my favorites because they're fearless. And what anybody finds when they come to a con, even with the smallest amount of effort for their costume, maybe it's even just a big dumb pair of sunglasses, they're going to find other people who are excited about the fact that they're there and that they're representing. So if you are worried about coming to a con because you worry about being judged for the quality of your costume, know that what you are going to find is a family that accepts you, no matter what level you have executed the costume on.
Okay. Well, this is starting to go into more general interest, but it's related to the process of creating a costume, or whether it be a prop or a set. What is your typical planning process for any project you do? Do you start with some sketches and references, or do you find yourself just jumping to prototyping and model making in your workshop?
Both of those are key elements. in any given project that I execute. And I'm going to be as general as whether it's making props or putting on silicon. Uh, but the first goal with any excursion, any creative excursion to me is finding out what my point of view is. So that is a research phase of sort of taking in a fire hose of new data, new ideas, uh, new ways of thinking through the structure and talking to my partners and my collaborators until there's something that makes sense to us, like, oh yeah, that's something we should concentrate on. We're in planning for Silicon this year. We had been talking to NASA about a more extensive NASA presence at the con this year, and when NASA came to us with some offers of panels that they wanted to have, that's a great point of view for us to have. That gives us a great handle with which to start to shake loose the rest of the con. So in everything that I build, whether it's a prop from a movie or something of my own design, or even something as big as a pop culture con, I'm first and foremost looking for what my point of view is. What is the experience I hope people have? What is the experience I hope I have? All of those are the most primary questions. And let me just say it, like, I'm looking for the first point of view. I'm not going to discover my whole point of view on the execution until it's almost done, right? But in order to get started, you're looking for that first thing that you can't stop thinking about. That first piece that captures your attention. That first part where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I think this is the opinion I have about this thing. And it's like I get a lot of questions from young makers about advice, and we think when we're young that we're building information into our heads, and we have remarkable brains when we're young, which pour all sorts of information and they hold it. It's great. And then we think that as we get older, we'll be able to apply that information to solve specific problems. And nothing could be further from the truth. It is all triage, and it feels like all a mess when you're in the middle of it. But my advice is you're going to know about one thing at a time, one thing that's really important to you. And if you grab onto that thing that's important to you and start working towards it with your collaborators and working through the problems you have to solve to get there, you're going to find more and more parts that make sense to you, that reach out to you, that resonate with you. And that is all a different way of saying, that's your point of view on the project that you're putting together.
And continuing with point of view, I'm assuming that would also go for any students, high school students, college graduates that are looking into getting to a creative field revolving around film and television, say with visual effects, special effects, props, set. But they might be seeing all of this and getting lost in the minutia of like, well, where am I supposed to focus on? Am I supposed to take that Udemy course to gain these set of skills? Like, how do you advise for any of us to like just go forward on something and kind of have faith in the process?
Oh, that's a really lovely question. Okay, so first let me start by answering and say that I have very little formal education. I have a high school diploma. I have a few months at NYU and the School of Visual Arts, and that is about it. My issues with college were personal. I was a very arrogant young person, and I thought being clever was enough. And so the point at which I dropped out, I just would like to state that as a caveat up front. That being said, I'm a big believer that people will be the best at the thing that they can't stop doing. And so when somebody is looking at you're asking specifically within creative film, theater industries, video, audio, there are so many avenues to travel down. But I think if each of us investigated our own hearts, we know that there are things we can't stop thinking about. And one of the reasons I despise gatekeeping is our experience of the stuff we can't stop thinking about is deeply personal. Nobody else gets to tell us what is valid in that regard. And so, my advice is always to move towards the thing that you can't stop thinking about, because what is happening there is that parts of you are showing up and waving their hands. And when you gravitate towards those parts of yourself, you find out more about yourself. I think we often gravitate towards industries in which the industry provides a certain amount of stress that we can take. Both my sons work in high-end food service for a Michelin star restaurant. And it's a very high pressure atmosphere, but and one is a server and one is a cook, but both of them really like the stress on a daily basis of that industry. It's not always ideal, but they are creatively fed by that stress. My first day on a commercial special effects set was highly stressful, but I found that stress invigorating. I'm not advocating that one looks for stress. I spent a lot of my life trying to find ways to mitigate stress, but at the same time, we like a pressure environment for solving problems. In general, I think human beings like to solve problems, and high pressure environments tend to lop branches off your decision tree. And I like the refinement of that kind of deadline. I hope that is somewhat of a useful answer. People will tell you all sorts of things about which industries are more sensible to gravitate towards. And I'm not sure that we always have a choice as to what our career is going to be. I also want to say, anybody who's young and listening to this and wondering what they should do, I want to point out you have more time than you think you have. It is absolutely true that life is short. However, if you are in your early 20s and you think that some ship has already sailed for you, you are not paying attention to the full landscape, because there are so many opportunities to try new things. I remember looking at a sculpture when I was 19 that had been welded together and thinking, welding, wow, there's a skill I'm never going to have time to learn. There's few dumber things that have crossed my brain pan, and a lot of dumbness has crossed this pan. That was ridiculous for me to think that thought back then. So don't limit yourself based on what other people are telling you is sensible or not sensible.
And I got to give a quick shout out to a professor here. So John York, TA 51 Theater Arts for Prop and Set. You can actually learn how to weld in that class. So any students who heard welding and got excited, there you can go do it this semester. If you're not too late to register, but you might be procrastinating at this point.
I will tell you one thing is a good friend of mine who didn't know what they wanted to do when they went to a high-level university chose a major solely on the fact that the major they chose, which at that point was biomedical engineering, gave them access to the largest number of tools and shops on the university. That's all. They figured if they had access to every possible shop, they'd be able to figure out what they wanted to do. And they were right. I love theater departments specifically because theater and film drift into so many other disciplines. You really get this ground level of prop making and design and painting and storytelling and writing and sound and visual and costume. I mean, all of these different art forms are available.
Not to mention the cross collaboration. Say if you're doing a science fiction film and you need a professor to reference on a specific subject, like we have computational linguistics professors here.
Amazing.
And all that. So, the whole resource at your fingertips, people. Now, I guess, yeah, I'll fill in here. I notice you really like science fiction. Looking at your filmography, Bicentennial Man, that truly touched me. It's one of the few movie adaptations I think is better than the book. And that says a lot, given Asimov is a genius and he's hailed as one of the greats. But Robin Williams' performance sold me on this machine that became human. But I just wanted to ask, where did it begin? I mean, I know you started out as a child actor, but what drew you towards working on those types of projects?
I grew up on science fiction. Star Trek, the original series, was playing on television every afternoon for a couple of hours through my whole childhood. When I was 10, Star Wars came out and altered the trajectory of my whole brain. Bicentennial Man was a really, really both terrible and amazing project. I had an awful supervisor on that project. And it was also a really, really fun movie to work on. Norman Griffin was the production designer. Norman Griffin was the production designer for Star Wars, one of my absolute heroes. Some of the designs coming out of his production design office were really thrilling to execute as a model maker. I also had several amazing interactions with Robin Williams on that set, and I'll tell you a couple of them. In one, I came out of the bathroom. I came back from a bathroom break to find Robin Williams in full robot costume at my desk in the model shop. And I walked over and he said, "Hey, they told me these toolboxes were yours." And my toolboxes, I should explain, at that point in time were a pair of aluminum doctor's bags that I had scratch built out of aluminum sheet and pop rivets. But they were also on scissor lifts so that I could raise the toolboxes up on either side of me. And all of my tools, I think there was over 1,400 in the two toolboxes, would be at the quickest possible retrieval distance for my hands so I could work as fast and intuitively as possible. And Robin Williams was standing there in a robot costume looking at my toolboxes and telling me about his tinkerer grandfather and how he would have loved these toolboxes. And he's asking me questions about my process at the same time as I'm looking at his amazing robot costume built by the incredible artisans at XFX. It was a fantastic half-hour conversation. He was super inquisitive and a really lovely, generous person just to talk to. Robin was also a great listener. He loved hearing your stories, and he was a good laugher. And a few weeks later, I found myself showing up one morning at Treasure Island onto the set, and I was at Craft Services in the morning getting a bagel, cream cheese, and coffee. And Robin was there doing the same thing. So Robin and I are chatting about our bagels. And that morning, there had been a news story of a boat that foundered off of the coast of Florida with several tons of cocaine on board. And it was all anyone was talking about in the news. And Robin he just started riffing on this news story, and he started doing impressions of the kind of people that would randomly show up to, quote, help in such a situation. And all these people were tweaked in various ways, and he's doing their speeches about how they can help with the situation of the foundering cocaine. And this, over about 10 or 15 minutes, leads to some impressions of dolphins on cocaine. And I don't know quite how he did it, but he's making these sounds that are clearly, if you heard it, you'd be like, oh, that's a dolphin that's coked up. And then there comes this moment that I never thought would happen, in which I'm getting the funniest, most amazing private comedy routine from one of the world's great comedians. Just me. And I have to say, Robin, I need to go to work now or I'll get fired. And you ask the world's greatest comedian to stop making you laugh so that you can go punch the clock. I never imagined such a thing would happen.
Well, it must have been in your head all day, like just those jokes, wanting to repeat them. So I wanted to check on the status of Trip Hunter.
Where is Trip Hunter?
Yeah, where's that guy?
Also, we have a legal ID in 4 minutes.
Okay. Adam, we were wondering if maybe you could help us create a new legal ID.
By all means.
Yeah, so the format is just 90.5 FM KSJS, San Jose State's underground radio station, and you can add any little bit of flavor you want.
90.5?
90.5 is our call sign. Yeah.
90.5 FM KSJS.
KSJS, San Jose.
San Jose. All right, you're listening to 90.5 KSJS San Jose. This is Adam Savage. Keep listening.
And this is G Drive from G Drive's folder. Hopefully we have a show soon. Okay, so maybe I can fill in a little bit of time. I don't know how, if you're willing to stick around for Trip.
Absolutely.
I'd really love to have him on.
Yeah.
So, well, you know what? I'm just going to go back to maybe like some more film related stuff since we are in the RTBF department. I noticed with Tested that you got to interview Dennis Gassner for one of my favorite movies of all time, Blade Runner 2049. And as someone who's been in that craft and have worked like parallel to many great directors, how did that feel to have like one of your favorite films of all time get a proper sequel and nonetheless have its own unique spin on it? Because the soul is definitely the same between the two Blade Runners, but they're coming about 30 years apart. Like it's a bleaker future. It's a more not industrialist, but brutalist, as
Mhm.
Denis Villeneuve would put it. So I just like some of your thoughts on that.
Well, those early films that shape us, and Blade Runner is one of the earliest to shape me. When I first saw it in New York City in the mid '80s, I lived in Manhattan and Brooklyn from 1985 to 1990, and at that point in time, New York City had, I think, at least four, if not five, rep houses, that is, movie theaters that showed a regular slate of really old movies. Um, and Blade Runner was something you could see once or twice a year in the theater if you were paying attention to their schedules. Um, and those early movies that they capture us, I think, because we have something to unpack out of them aesthetically, personally, situationally, narratively. Uh, and so, I mean, Blade Runner was so important to my whole social group in New York in the mid '80s. We would rent it on VHS and watch it repeatedly. So it was very exciting when Blade Runner 2049 comes out. And frankly, even though I got to visit the set and spend a week with the incredible filmmakers, I was able to suspend all my disbelief upon sitting in the theater and watching Denis' incredible vision. And so for me, it's one of those very rare situations in which the first movie, Blade Runner, shows up in the '80s and shifts my entire aesthetic narrative brain in an interesting direction. And 30 years later, Denis makes a sequel, and it does the same thing. It gives me a whole new set of aesthetic directions that I'm fascinated by.
It almost has that Terminator 2 moment, like where you get a sequel, a different interpretation from a director who also loves the first project, but obviously the time distance is further. Do you have a feeling it's going to have that impact on at least my generation and younger people moving forward?
That's always impossible to know. No matter how much I think I can know it, I'm always surprised. I got to work on AI, artificial intelligence, which is a Steven Spielberg movie starring Jude Law and Haley Joel Osment that began as a Stanley Kubrick film. And I actually started hearing rumors about AI in the early '90s, living here in San Francisco. I knew people. I knew people in the film industry. I had heard word that Stanley Kubrick was interested in in a new science fiction movie that involved a submerged New York and a boy that never grows old. So when I finally got to work on it, I felt like I was working on another Blade Runner. And I remember sitting in the theater being quite disappointed by the film as it showed. And I'll tell you, I watched AI a few months ago, and I was absolutely shocked by how much better it held up than I remembered. It is a very compelling and intense story. There are some moments in it that no other movie has really gotten to. There's this bit in AI when the young boy is running around with his robotic teddy bear, and he says to the teddy bear, "What do we do now, Teddy?" And the bear says, "Now we run." And the idea of your toy telling you it's time to run is one of the bleakest, most amazing narrative moments I can think of. And I'm really grateful to Spielberg for making that movie happen.
It's definitely a shining moment for Haley Joel Osment as well. Just the detachment scene of "Mommy, mommy, don't let me go." Because you have to think like that level of programming to have the emotional attachment and to be able to sell that beyond the Turing test. Well, it looks like we have Trip Hunter on the phone. That's
Excellent.
correct. So,
Hey, Trip.
Hello, everyone.
How's it going, sir?
I'm pretty well, Adam. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good this morning.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
I'm talking movies and special effects and silicon. What could be wrong?
Nothing. 3 good topics.
So, Trip, now that you're on air, thank you once again, actually, for being a part of this Silicon family and making the dreams come true for many people in the Bay Area who want to have a Comic-Con that also meets Makers Faire in their backyard. That's just such a nice resource to have for many people.
Oh, thank you.
And I wanted to hear a little bit more about yourself. So one of the earlier questions I asked before you came on is like, how did you and Adam Savage meet? And how long did it take to plan that first convention all the way back in 2014 before it was called Silicon? So I'm wondering
Right.
what your perspective
Oh, wait,
is on that.
before Trips talks, I just
Go
want to
ahead.
talk about Trip for just 1 second and sing his praises. He's not only an amazing manager and my partner in throwing Silicon, but Trip is also a maker's maker who every minute he is not managing one of the like seemingly 90 separate projects he is managing is out in his garage making stuff all the freaking time. It is an austere example, and I'm always impressed, Trip.
Oh my God, coming from you, Adam, that's a huge compliment. Thank you. So I got involved in this, initially it was Silicon Valley Comic Con with Steve Wozniak, and he was, part of the event for the first couple years. And when Steve got this idea, it was important to him that this was a science and tech as well as pop culture event. And so that was kind of the genesis of what we became, of what we started out as. And Adam was always, I was always a huge fan of Adam. And I think I reached out early, and Adam was kind enough to say, yeah, I'd love to be a part of your event. And that relationship just grew. When Woz wanted to step back a little bit, I asked Adam if he was interested in becoming more involved, and he said yes. And that's kind of the story.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Wozniak is such a fun guy. I remember my uncle met him for lunch once, and just the amount of generosity in a conversation, at least that I've heard, he can really share himself with another person. You experienced that.
Steve wants to spread the message of computer and tech literacy to the whole world. Spending time around Steve is exactly what you think it is. It's exactly what you hope it will be. You are in the presence of such a literally, I don't use this word nearly ever, but it is a maverick brain that Woz possesses, and it is delightful to be around it.
That's great.
It's very true.
So, I just wanted to get a sense for your excitement of, well, specifically directed at Trip, and Adam can tag in, of any new introductions to this year's Silicon. I know this is probably the second year where things are semi-normal after COVID. You guys had to go online for more of those sessions, but you made it work. And I'm just interested to see, like, what do you want to see by the end of this August, and where are you hoping to learn from it?
Yeah, I think for us, last year was so stilted. We were limited to the number of people we could have in the convention center. And this is, I think this really feels to me, and I think Adam would agree, feels like the first year where we actually can spread our wings a little bit.
100%.
Adam, would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, no, it really feels. Last year was really lovely in how intimate it felt, and like the core that showed up really, really represented, and that was delightful. It is really nice to spread our wings at this point this year and feel like we can welcome a larger family.
And we're still we don't want to fill the convention center to capacity. I think that would probably make people nervous. So we're scaling it back a bit, but it'll be bigger than last year. And we have this. I don't know, Adam, if you've had a chance to talk about the theme of creating the improbable.
No, I was leaving. I was waiting for you for that Trip.
So our theme this year is creating the improbable, and the idea behind that is Adam brings such a maker expertise to this event, and it has attracted a very strong maker community. And the beauty of that is people will walk into this convention hall with one perception in mind of what they're going to experience. And our hope is that they walk out feeling like makers, because there's so much on the show floor for them to do and make. We have a 90 by 50 foot space that is just designated to building, and you can come and get materials, some for free, and sit down with some of the best makers in the world and make things. And I think that's a really cool component of what we're going to be doing.
And let me also expand, because one of the things that Trip and I talk about a lot, both personally and with the team, is that we define making as in the broadest terms possible. It is not just putting together things with your hands or gluing them together. Making is anytime you use your point of view, we're back to point of view, anytime you use your point of view to make something that didn't exist in the world. That could be a screenplay, it could be a table, it could be a tank, and it could be a house. All of those are making. So is coding, so is poetry, so is playing music. When we define it that expansively, I hope that we create a home for anybody to find their point of view and learn how to exercise it.
Yeah. And Adam, we do have some information that hasn't been shared yet, but we could. And Adam, do you want to talk about the live feed?
Oh, we can talk about that now?
We can.
Oh, okay. So we have this is the first time in my life. I have several friends who are astronauts, have been astronauts and have been to space. But right now, a good friend of mine is currently in space on the ISS. Astronaut Kjell Lindgren is up there with Crew 4. And he is going to beam down virtually to Silicon and do a panel live from the ISS. This is something that's been in the works for months. I literally said to Kjell, I wanted to invite you to our con, but you're going to be in space. And he said, how is that an inhibition? I think we can make that work. We're very excited to announce that.
So stay tuned. We're going to do a little contest to ask people so we can submit 8 to 10 questions for him to answer. And we're going to do just a social thing so people can submit a question. And so if we pick your question, then Adam can ask Kjell your question live, which I think will be pretty cool.
Out of curiosity, what kind of latency are you able to get nowadays? Because I have that perception of Apollo 13.
Right. With the Quindar beep
camera.
and the 2-second delay. The delay to talk to the ISS is less than you think it is. I've actually had a couple of phone conversations with Kjell and prep for this. I didn't know he was calling, but my phone rang and it said it was a Houston number. And I thought, okay, I do know some people in Houston, so let me answer it. And it was Kjell from space. And it was maybe a 200 millisecond delay. It wasn't that bad. It was like talking to Japan on the telephone.
That's not bad at all.
No, and I actually asked him. I was like, "You're calling me from space, dude. Are you in line of sight?" And he said, "Well, yes, I am looking at the coast of California right now, but that doesn't matter because my signal," he said, "is going up." The GPS, the phone repeaters travel farther from Earth than the ISS is.
That's probably the frequency. Well, anyways, not going to get into the science of that. But thank you, Mr. Robot. It's okay. We got to get our legal ID in. And I was wondering, Trip Hunter, if you could maybe help us contribute to this too. So we're looking to get some more legal IDs for our radio shows and DJs. All you have to do is say 90.5 FM KSJS San Jose, and then add your own spin on it, flavor, if you want to give your name as a shout out. And we'd love to have you on that DigiCart.
Great. 90.5 KSJS San Jose. This is Trip Hunter, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to both of us today.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here. A question for both of you. I'm actually kind of curious, very quick. What's your latest side project, Trip, as far as like in the workshop? I know Adam mentioned you're a workaholic when it comes to making projects on your free time.
Yeah. Yeah. COVID, I started an epoxy and wood cutting board company because I wanted to build a bar in my house because all the bars were closed in Park City. So I figured I would build one. And I started making cutting boards, and that turned into a company called Blue Fig. And so now I'm making cutting boards all the time, which is incredibly fun.
They are seriously beautiful.
Purchased a CNC machine and learned how to make some really interesting places. If you have a location or a house on a lake, I can do the whole lake in your property. So that's kind of kept me busy.
I'm sure a lot of people will want custom orders from you now, so I hope you can backlog that. Okay, finally wrapping up. So I wanted to circle back to the event. Uh, People want to know, are you going to dress up and walk around, Trip? That includes you as well as Adam Savage. And if so, what are some ideas that you have considered for this
Oh,
year?
oh no, we're not giving
Well,
anything
last
away.
year Adam lent me his Batman costume, which I'm a huge fan of Batman because he doesn't need a superpower; he just needs brains. I'm not saying I have them, but I can achieve that more easily than I can a superpower.
I have to
And
say,
so that was the first time I've ever dressed up, and I just it was amazing.
that was the first
I'm
time
a
you
huge
dressed up for a
Halloween
con.
fan.
That was the first time you dressed up for a con. You are a cosplayer
That's right.
extraordinaire in your personal life on
That's right.
Halloween.
That's right. I'm usually just kind of a little too busy running around, but Adam, put the gauntlet down and said, "No, you have to do this." So I did, and I had a ball doing that. I have a couple ideas this year, but I'm going to keep them under wraps.
I have to say, so Trip sends me pictures of his and his wife's Halloween costumes every year, and it's always awe-inspiring, the kind of things that they do. And also, he said, could I borrow maybe a Batman suit for Silicon this year? And I gave him a Batman suit. He put it on, and looking after he came off the floor, sweaty and uncomfortable, because every costume is sweaty and uncomfortable. The joy on Trip's face from having walked the con floor as Batman was so palpable. It's one of my favorite memories of last year, man.
The sweat probably adds to the realism of Gotham,
100%,
too.
Totally. As for my costume, I am actually, when I leave here today, I'm going back and doing some of the final prep on my costume, but I can give no hints because my fan base is way too smart at guessing every costume I've ever given a hint at in less than 10 seconds. So there's just no more hints.
And something I wanted to repeat on that I've heard you say in pretty much any podcast revolving around conventions is cosplay does not equal consent.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's an important reminder, not to be a stickler on it, but I think it would be great if you could kind of share what that means.
Well, first and foremost, it means that the women who are dressed up at a con as some sexy characters are not there for your enjoyment, and be mindful of how you speak to them and that you speak to them like people. It is a key ethos at a con not to just snap pictures randomly, but to ask a costumed person if you can take their picture. And this is twofold. One, it is them giving consent for the photo, but two, they're going to make your photo so much better because everyone who has put on a costume has practiced a pose, if not several, and they are going to go into that pose when you ask to take a picture, and it's going to make your picture way, way more awesome. That is a really deep, to me, foundational ethos of the cons is the consent of that everyone who is there gets to be there on their terms, and gets to have the experience that they want as safely as possible. That is just a vital way to attend the con and the mental frame I'd like you to have if you come.
Yeah, I know everyone's kind of swimming in their own minds at a convention. So if you're constantly getting pulled aside for questions, it's good to get the question first. But like sometimes I'm have to move on to A23B for this one speech panel. I'll be late, but I'll get back to you and just let's exchange emails. Do you have any advice for communicating that? If you just run into too many people that you like and you want to get more time to spend with them later?
Well, I think that being overwhelmed at a con is to a certain extent part of the experience of being there. Those of us who regularly attend cons go to see our friends that we don't get to see in other places. And we go to see new executions of incredible costumes. We go to get those creative juices flowing. I remember the first mashup cosplay I saw that really floored me. And it was the late aughts at San Diego Comic-Con, and it was a Hello Kitty pink Darth Vader that was 7.5 feet tall. And I saw that and I just thought, I'm not thinking big enough about where costumes and cosplay can go. That there is a Hello Kitty Darth Vader in the world makes me so happy. That is exactly the kind of pop culture mashup I'm here for.
And with the MCU multiverse, anything's possible now.
Absolutely.
Anything.
Yes, we're going to have Barbie Batman any second now.
Well, Adam.
Maybe that's my costume.
There you go, Trip. You could pull it off, dude.
Good.
Anyways, it's been a pleasure having you guys. Thank you for coming on the phone call trip. Thank you for coming into our studio, Adam. There's
My
coffee
pleasure.
out there for you if you want it. And welcome to
The
downtown
only
San
other
Jose.
thing I'd add is, there's so much content at this con that we haven't even begun to touch. So if anybody's interested in checking out the website, seeing some of the guests that are coming, that's at siliconsj.com.
Absolutely. Yeah, we covered maybe 5% of the incredible guests and panels that we're going to have, both maker, science, and pop culture. We're super excited.
Do you guys have any plugins for social media as well while we're on that?
I think the best way to get to all of our socials is siliconsj.com.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we are out of time here. Once again, thank you, Adam. Thank you, Trip. Have a great day, great morning, everyone, to your Monday. And I hope you have a safe commute out there and getting back to school, that you enjoy that initial grind. This is 90.5 FM KSJS, San Jose State's underground radio station. G Drive signing off.